Go. The scripture for today is Luke chapter 14, verses 7 to 14. I will be reading it in my mother tongue Telugu. పిలువబడిన వారు భోజన పంక్తికి అగ్రపీఠములు ఏర్పరచుకున్నట్టు చూచి ఆయన వారితో ఈ ఉపమానము చెప్పెను. నిన్నెవరైనా పెండ్లి విందుకు పిలిచినప్పుడు అగ్రపీఠము మీద కూర్చుండవద్దు. ఒకవేళ నీకంటే ఘనుడు అతని చేత పిలువబడుగా నిన్ను అతనిని పిలిచిన వాడు వచ్చి ఇతనికి చోటిమ్మని నీతో చెప్పును. అప్పుడు నీవు సిగ్గుపడి కడపటి చోటుకు కొనసాగుదువు. అయితే నీవు పిలువబడినప్పుడు నిన్ను పిలిచినవాడు వచ్చి స్నేహితుడా పైచోటికి పొమ్మని నీతో చెప్పులాగున నీవు పోయి కడపటి చోటున కూర్చుండుము. అప్పుడు నీతో కూడా కూర్చుండు. తను తాను హెచ్చించుకొని ప్రతివాడు తగ్గింపబడును, తను తాను తగ్గించుకొను వాడు హెచ్చింపబడనని చెప్పెను. మరియు ఆయన తన పిలిచిన వానితో ఇట్లనను, నీవు పగటి విందునైనను రాత్రి విందునైనను చేయనప్పుడు నీ స్నేహితులైనను నీ సోదరులైనను నీ బంధువులైనను ధనవంతులుగా నీ పొరుగువారైనను పిలవవద్దు. వారు ఒకవేళ నిన్ను మరలా పిలుతురు గనుక నీకు ప్రత్యుపకారము కలుగును. అయితే నీ విందు చేయనప్పుడు బీదలను, అగ్రహీనులను, కుంటివాండ్రను, గుడ్డివాండ్రను పిలువుము. నీకు ప్రత్యుపకారం చేయుటకు వారికేమీ లేదు గనుక నీవు ధన్యుడు వవుదువు. నీతిమంతులు పునరుత్థానమందున నీ ప్రత్యుపకారమును పొందుదనని చెప్పును. With this, we end the scripture reading for today.
Good morning. My name is Jason and I'm the lead pastor of New Hope Church. In 2009, I was the chaplain of a college in India. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to teach a few classes as well. Now, classrooms in India are very different than classrooms in America. And I don't mean in the way that the seats are arranged. I mean that when a teacher walks into a room, all of the students will stand up and they'll remain standing until the teacher walks to the front of the room and tells them all that they can be seated. It's really wild and somewhat embarrassing or unsettling if you aren't sure what's going on or no one prepared you for it. This is a way of giving honor to the teachers. And this is a part of Indian culture. For example, if you're sitting in a room and you're on a couch and someone who's older than you walks into the room, it is customary for people who are younger to stand as a way of honoring their elders. You probably know that many Eastern cultures are like this. They are known for their honor-shame culture. But it doesn't mean that people in the West or cities like New York City don't experience honor and shame as well. It just looks different in our value system. There may be ways that we seek honor, but we aren't really aware of it. And today we will explore what Jesus has to say about this. We are in the middle of a series called The Stories of Jesus, where we explore Jesus' parables in the Gospel of Luke. Parables were stories that Jesus told that had a hidden meaning, often had a deeper truth or a lesson that he wanted to convey to his disciples and followers. And today we are going to listen to a story that he tells about honor. And we're going to look at it from two different angles. We're going to see it from the angle of the seats that we seek and the seats that we provide. I'll explain what I mean. Let's look at the first one together. The seats that we seek. So Jesus was invited to dine at the house of a Pharisee. And there isn't very much that we know about him other than the fact that he was a prominent figure in those days. And Jesus and his disciples aren't the only ones who were invited. Apparently, there were other religious leaders and people there as well. And as people start trickling in, Jesus notices something. He notices that the people who were invited started to seek the best seats of honor. Well, what is a seat of honor? Well, depending on the culture, the venue, or the setting, the seats of honor are different. For example, it could be the front of a room or on stage. It could be a VIP box. It could be in certain churches, like a church that I was a pastor of before, one of the pastors of before, they had a little plaque that was actually fastened to the front pew where the senior pastor and the youth pastor would sit. That was a seat of honor, right? So in every culture and venue and setting, the seats of honor look a little different. If you are a member of a church, the most coveted seat typically in a church is a seat closest to the door. That's the one that everyone fights for. And so apparently there were seats in the Pharisees' home that were esteemed, and it was coveted by all. And Jesus notices that everyone is making a beeline for the seat of honor. And then he uses this as a teaching moment for his disciples. Let's pick up from verse 7. Now he told a parable to those who were invited, when he noticed how they chose the places of honor, saying to them, when you are invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not sit down in a place of honor, lest someone more distinguished than you be invited by him. And he who invited you both will come and say to you, give your place to this person, and then you will begin with shame to take the lowest seat. But when you're invited, go and sit in the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you'll be honored in the presence of all who sit at table with you. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. So Jesus notices that people are clamoring for the best seats, the seats of honor. And he tells his disciples that they are to be different than that. That's not how they ought to conduct themselves. When they get invited to a place, they are to not go for the seat of honor, but the lowest seat instead. For if they go to the seat of honor, someone more esteemed may arrive, and then they're going to be told to give up their seat and might be embarrassed in the process. But if they go to the lowest seat first, the host may come to their disciples and tell them to take a more honorable seat. Now, the first thing to note here is that Jesus is not trying to teach his disciples how to fake humility. He's not trying to give them a manipulative or an underhanded way of really getting the best seats, and this is how you do it. That's not the point here. The point is that he's trying to teach them that those who exalt themselves will be humbled by God, and those who humble themselves before the Lord will be exalted by him. The idea is that you shouldn't go around looking to honor yourself. Let others do that. And more importantly, let God do that. Don't make that your aim. Don't make that your focus when you're with other people. Instead, if you go into a place and humble yourself, you may be honored by the Lord and the people there. But if you walk into a place to honor yourself, you might find yourself being humbled. But let's not think of this simply in literal terms. Metaphorically speaking, even if we don't actually go and make a beeline for any particular seats in a venue, metaphorically speaking, there are seats of honor that we look to occupy today. There is an inner circle. There is an inner ring. We all want to be in the room where it happens, the room where it happens, the room where it happens. So ask yourself, what is that? What is that seat of honor? What kind of honor do you seek? For some of us, it might be parents and family members. It's a seat of honor before them. You might say, I want them to finally respect me. I want them to honor what I do. I want to stop having to justify my career choices. Or it might be naysayers, a seat of honor before them. I want to prove them wrong. You've got people like that in your life, people you want to prove wrong. I moved to the city to follow my dreams. And if I don't accomplish it, it would mean that they're right, and I can't have that. So you feel an incredible amount of pressure to succeed, in hopes of hoping to be honored by them. Maybe it's your peers. Maybe you want to be respected in their eyes. Or maybe it's your employer, your boss, or people who are experts in your field. You want to be recognized by people who are in the top of your field. So who approves of you and you're elated, and who doesn't and you're crushed? Whose words have you assumed are the very words of God for your life? What are the seats of honor that you seek? You see, we all need affirmation from others. There's no way that we could go throughout life and be emotionally healthy without having the affirmation of others. People who will put their hands on our shoulders and speak a word of encouragement and blessing over our lives. We need that, and that's by design. So let's do away with the thinking that we don't need others to treat us with dignity. We do, and that's God's design. But we must ask ourselves, if their word or if the words of others are more decisive than God's. Because you know what happens when their word is more decisive than God's? Our joy will go as their opinions go of us. Here's maybe a basic or a silly example that many of us experience, especially in today's digital and social media age. Listen to one example from writer Bruce Feiler, who wrote an article for the New York Times called "For the Love of Being Liked." And he reflects upon what we all experience in social media when we look to others to validate us or honor us in the form of a like. Here's what he says. Walking through an airport newsstand this year, I noticed a novelty. I quickly snapped a photo and sent out a tweet to my modest list of followers. Then I waited for the love. I checked the response before passing through security. Nothing. I glanced again while waiting for the plane. Still nothing. I looked again before we took off. Nobody cared. My little attempt to pass a lonely hour in an airport with some friendly interaction had turned into the opposite, a brutal cold shower of social isolation. A few days later, I mentioned this story to my wife. "What a great tweet," she said. She then retweeted it to her larger list of followers. Within seconds, it scored. Some Twitter bigwigs picked it up, and soon hundreds of people had passed it along, added their approval. Though I should be above such things, my wisp of loneliness was soon replaced with a gust of self-satisfaction. Just like that, he went from a cold shower of social isolation, feeling no one cared, to a gust of self-satisfaction. Now, this may be a silly example, but this is the vertigo that we experience when we want a seat of honor. Whether it's in front of people that we know in our minds, like our parents and our loved ones, or maybe even estranged friends, naysayers in our lives, or people that we don't know, strangers on social media. This is what happens when we look to have a seat of honor and their word becomes most decisive in our lives. We can instantly go from feeling a cold shower of social isolation to a gust of self-satisfaction. We can go from self-loathing to self-satisfaction because we go as their opinions go of us. So what's the alternative? What's the alternative to reorienting your life around gaining a seat of honor in the eyes of others? I think Jesus tells us here, or at least it's implied. It's to believe and know that God sees you, that you are beneath His gaze. Isn't that what's implied when he says that those who humble themselves will be exalted? It's acknowledging that there is someone in the room who already sees you, even if no one else does. It's like Jesus draws our attention to the face in the room that nobody is looking for. He draws our attention to the Lord, to His eyes, what God sees, unknown to the world, but known by Him. But do you really believe that today? I mean, do you really, in your heart of hearts, believe that He sees you? I believe that one of the reasons that we strive for seats of honor, to be honored by others, when we make it our obsession, is because we don't believe we are seen. We don't think that we are known. We don't think that we are recognized by anyone of significance or importance. But what if the creator of the universe who formed you is peering down at you right now in this moment? And what if He sees your thoughts from afar? What if He knows every word before it's actually on your tongue? What if He sees you and He is eager to show you compassion today? He is overflowing with love towards you. What if He's eager to do good towards you and delights in being kind towards you? What if He knows your name and calls you by name? What if your name is written on His hand? What if you had His undivided attention today? That if you were to talk to Him right now, that you would have the undivided attention of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords? What if you had His unflinching gaze right now? Could it be that we are striving to be seen because we haven't rested in the fact that we are already seen and loved by Him? I know this temptation all too well. And I want to tell you about how the Lord recently gave me an opportunity to rest in Him. And I'm sharing this story for two reasons. Some of you may not be able to relate to the quest for honor, But for those who do and can relate to that quest, I want you to know that you're not alone. That's the first reason why I'm sharing this. The second is I share this story as an example of the ways that God may be giving us the grace to rest in Him, though we're unaware of it. He may be presenting us opportunities to truly rest, and we really don't see it in our quest for honor. So here's something that happened to me recently. A few Christian publications wrote about our church. Acts 29, the network that we're a part of, a few weeks ago, asked if I'd be willing to share our church's story. And of course, I said yes. And so a few reporters reached out to me, and I had the honor of being able to share a little bit about what God has done in and through our small church plant. And the articles were great, except for one thing. They got my name wrong. They called me Pastor Jones throughout their article. And I got to tell you, when I read it, I laughed. I laughed because the Lord knows the inner circles that I am tempted to. He knows the temptations of my heart. And I knew that in that moment, He was giving me an opportunity to rest. We may not realize it, but even something as simple, as harmless and innocent as a typo can be God's way of telling us, I love you. Rest in that. I see you. Rest in that. And I want you to understand why I say that there may be opportunities of grace or opportunities for you to rest in what you might consider a setback in your life. As you might strive for a seat of honor and experience a setback, you may not realize that God is actually giving you an opportunity to rest in His love, that He's actually doing a loving thing. He's preserving for you the best seat. I want you to hear this when I say this, family. I want you to know that the best seat is always the seat that gives you the greatest view of God. Let me say that again. As everyone strives for the seat of honor, as everyone strives for the best seat that they consider to be the best, I want you to know that the best seat is always the seat that gives you the greatest view of God and His goodness, His love, His character, and to rest in that. That's why the best seats are always the seats of dependence, the seats of neediness. The best seats are always the lowest seat, the seats where we are humbled before Him so that we can have eyes to see the one who sees us. And when He positions us to sit in that seat, it becomes an opportunity to find true rest, to say, Lord, I am beneath your gaze, and that is more than I deserve. Unknown to the world, but known by you. That is enough for me. We don't have to fight to make our name known when He knows us and calls us by name. We don't have to fight to be seen by others when we know that we are seen by the Lord. So where is God calling you to stop striving? What seats of honor are you seeking today? So that's the first angle that we said that we were going to look at. In Jesus' story about honor, He draws our attention to the seats that we seek. And now we're going to look at the second angle, the second thing that He teaches here. The seats that we provide. The seats that we provide. Jesus' story doesn't just direct us to think about how we seek honor. It does that, but it also leads us to reflect on the way that we honor others as well. Because think about it. The person who walks into a room and immediately takes the most honored seat assumes something about everyone else in the room or everyone else who might come. He assumes that there's no one else that's going to be more honorable. It's kind of presumptuous to go into a place and sit in the most honorable seat. You're assuming that there's no one more esteemed than you, no one more significant than you. So in striving for the place of honor, we cannot do that without unseating other people in the process. The only way that you can follow what Jesus says here is to walk into every room, in every setting, and consider others as being more significant than you. You may not have realized how your pursuit or quest for honor had a way of affecting your other relationships. You may not have realized how you ended up unseating them in the process or what you assumed about them in the process. To follow Jesus here is to interact with them, considering them as being more significant than you and taking that posture. By taking the lowest seat, you assume that they are more significant than you. But you don't do this from a place of insecurity. We do it from a place of security. As I said before, we do it knowing that we are seen by God and known by God. We do it out of the overflow of that security. We do it from a place of strength. And because of that, we are free to not focus on the seats that we can occupy, the seat of honor. Instead, we can focus on giving others a seat of honor, on the seats that we can provide. Let's pick up from verse 12. Notice what Jesus says immediately after he tells them this parable. Verse 12. He said also to the man who had invited him, "When you give a dinner or a banquet, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors, lest they also invite you in return and you be repaid. But when you give a feast, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the just." So after the parable, Jesus looks to the person who invited him, probably the Pharisee or the prominent religious leader, and he tells him, "Look, this is great, but when you host a dinner or a banquet, don't just focus on inviting your friends or your relatives, loved ones, or even people who are rich and esteemed in society, people who have the ability to repay you. It would be even better to invite people who can't." And he specifically mentions the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind. People who are often not allowed into the temple, who are cut off from religious and social life. And here, after calling out their desire to seek after the seats of honor, Jesus essentially says, do one better. Instead of going and seeking out a seat of honor, instead, give a person who has no honor or dignity in the eyes of others. Give that person a seat at your table. A person who doesn't think they'll ever have a seat or a seat with you. I love the way that one scholar, Dr. Darrell Bach, puts it. In short, the church is not to worry about the chair of honor. Rather, it is to make chairs available to those who are looking for a place to sit, even for those who think there are no chairs for them. So this requires a different approach to life. Not first thinking about the honor that we can receive, but the honor that we can bestow. We don't go into a place thinking about how we can have everyone look upon us and sit in a position where their gaze is upon us. We are to have eyes for those for whom no one else is looking. We are to look to give a seat for those who feel that they have no seat. And so right now I'm going to slow down just a little bit so you could think about who that is in your life. I'm going to slow down so you can reflect upon these questions that I'm going to ask. Who in your life, or who is someone that you may know of that needs a seat right now? Who in your life thinks that there is no way that they could have a seat? That there's no way that they could be welcomed by God or welcomed by you? Maybe they think they're cut off from God's sight. Maybe they think they're cut off from your sight. But who in your life can you invite in? Maybe there's no way that they can repay you. And that's the condition as you think about who that is in your life. So here's the critical part. Jesus wants us to welcome and love people who do not have the ability to repay us. It doesn't mean that they have nothing valuable to contribute in our relationship or nothing valuable to give. Everyone has something valuable to contribute. We can learn and gain much from people, even if they cannot reciprocate when it comes to paying us back in the form of a meal or providing something monetary. It doesn't mean that they have nothing to give. It's just that we ought to look to make our love and service unilateral. We ought to look to make it a one-directional, loving people without expecting something in return. The point is that we ought to reflect God's behavior in the way that we give others a seat. And isn't this how He has loved us? Jesus, who exists in unapproachable light, leaving heaven to take the lowest place among us, that He would die naked on a cross for the sins of all those who would put their hope in Him, to die for our sins, not grasping for dignity in that moment, but coming to bestow it upon us, upon a people who could never repay Him for all of His goodness, grace, and mercy towards them. And yet, that did not stop Him. He showed His love for a people whom He knows can never, He doesn't even have the capacity to reciprocate it to the degree that He has loved us. And He did all of that knowing that we would never be able to out-sacrifice Him, that we would never be able to out-love Him, and that we will never be able to truly repay Him. And now Jesus says to us, go and do likewise, New Hope Church. Love people like that. Don't walk into a room thinking about how you can be honored. Walk into a room thinking about how you can bestow honor. Don't walk into a room making a beeline for the seat of honor or fight for the seat of honor. Instead, make your focus upon how you can provide a seat for those who do not have one, with no thought of repayment, no thought of reciprocity. Who are those people in your life? Who are the people who have nowhere to sit? And how can we love them and show them honor? As you know, we started a food pantry in the neighborhood a few weeks ago. Shaheen Marjan is our community care director. She's the one who leads our pantry ministry. She knows what it's like to be homeless, to sleep in the subway. And she's had experience working for food pantries before. And so we are so grateful that she is leading our pantry ministry. Several weeks ago, as we were beginning the food pantry, Shaheen and I had the opportunity to record a training video for our volunteers. And at the very end of it, she shared a powerful story. And with her permission, you get to hear it right now. Here's Shaheen.
And we hope that we have a very, very good community. The number of the people that you serve is not matter, but how they feel when they leave us, that is important. I give you example. I had a homeless person that I saw her and I did nothing. I just gave cup of hot tea and I look at that the shoes is not proper. There was some shoes around. We gave, but because she was old, she was not able to bend. I sat down and then I gave the shoes. Help her to feel, to just put on that shoes. Later she said, I went to so many pantries. They look at me from up to down, but this is the only place you are sitting down and looking at me up. And that make her part of us. She is my close friend. She's coming and we enjoy of each other. And I think I did nothing except my duty, but that was so big things for the person. Please identify those situations and try to use it. God give us that chance, then we should capture it.
I love that line. Everywhere I go, people look down at me. They're looking at me up and down, but you're the first person to actually take a position where you are looking up at me. I told you earlier that the best seat is always the seat that gives us the greatest view of God. And this is what essentially happens when we provide other people a seat. Shaheen might not have realized it then, but she was giving that person a seat to see that this is what God's love is like. When we love people the way that Jesus has called us to, we give them a seat to see this is what God is like. This is what His love is like. We spend so much time seeking the seat of honor, but when you know that you are seen by the Lord, and that you are loved by Him, and that He is rich enough to give us everything that we need in this life and in the life to come, our focus will not be on the seats that we can seek for ourselves, but instead, our focus will be on the seats that we can provide. Let's pray.
precious blood has left me forgiven, pure like the whitest of snow, powerful to make sin and shame retreat. This covenant is making me whole. So I will rise and lift my head, for by his mercy my life was spared. The highest name has set me free. Because of Jesus, my heart is clean. Purify my heart in your presence. Teach me to discover joy of holiness that forms as you draw me close. In you, what was lost is restored. So I will rise and lift my head, for by his mercy my life was spared. The highest name has set me free. Because of Jesus, my heart is clean. Because of Jesus, my heart is clean.
We just want to thank you again for joining us for our online service. For those of you who are watching right now and you don't have a community and you experience loneliness and isolation, I want you to know that you have a seat with us. We'd love for you to have a seat with us. Right now, you could text New Hope Church to 94,000 and you'll get a text message that will tell us basically how we can keep in contact with you, where we can share more about our church, where we can hear more from you about your story, and how we can share how you can have a relationship with Jesus Christ. So right now, text New Hope Church to 94,000, and we would love to welcome you into our community. This is also the time of our service when we worship God through our giving. So right now, you can text any dollar amount to 84321 or visit our website, newhopenyc.com. And we just want to thank you ahead of time for your generosity. Because of your generosity, we're able to do the work that we do in and among our community and the neighborhood. And we just want to thank you for that. Speaking of websites, we have a brand new website. So feel free to visit it and share it with others. It's a great way to get other people connected to our church. And if you're watching and you're not connected, it's a great way for you to stay updated on our church and for you to connect with us as well. Now, on that note, please receive this benediction from the Gospel of John, chapter 13, verse 34. As we begin our week, may we remember this commandment that the Lord has given us, to love one another as he has loved us. Amen. Have a great week.